Welcome back. Tomorrow, the Johannesburg High Court will sentence convicted paedophile Warren Knoop. The 40-year-old was found guilty of 870 charges that relate to child rape, possession and distribution of child pornography. His victims were his girlfriend's daughters, of which the youngest was 12 months old.
A tranquil eastern suburb, high walls making for good neighbors and to keep unsavory visitors at bay. But one predator was in their midst. Pedophile Warren Knoop lived here, and it's where some of the sexual abuse took place. On Friday, Knoop pleaded for a lesser sentence, trying to downplay the severity of his deeds. Knoop said he had since found Jesus and could assist police nabbing other pedophiles. Following the shocking court revelations, many were left questioning how protector turns predator.
They place themselves within their environment in a way that they play, let's call it, a positive role within their environment. Families of the children perhaps may rely on them financially or for other roles. The community as a whole may rely on them. And so they're placed in a way that the community doesn't want them to be in this abuse. It becomes it becomes a harder pill to swallow, if you will. Also, they classically build more credibility within the community than often the victims themselves. So if it ever does come out, very often they are believed over the victim.
In most cases, the perpetrator is known to the victim. A major red flag, watching child pornography.
Another important factor to remember perhaps is the presence of child sexual abuse images, commonly referred to as child pornography. And this is because if we look at the heart of it, there is so much pornography available in this day and age on the internet, freely available, that for an individual to seek out illegal child pornography gives us quite a clear reflection of their sexual preference.
Knoop possibly faces life behind bars. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
For more on that story, clinical psychologist Professor Gerard Labuschagne joins us from our Pretoria studio. Good evening, Professor. Thank you for your time. Now, you've worked on countless cases involving child pornography, serial rape, and child sexual offences during your time as head of the police's investigative psychology section. In your opinion, what would be an appropriate sentence in a...
Well, obviously, it's ultimately up to the court to make a decision based on arguments from both the prosecution and defense. But typically, when you look at the rape of a minor, you're automatically usually looking at what we call the Minimum Sentences Act, and that is usually going to be a life sentence straight off for that first rape of a child. Of course, there are possibilities where the defense can argue extenuating circumstances, but just based on what I've heard about this case, it's most likely that he's going to face at least multiple life sentences for what he's done.
Now, with 870 charges, how does someone like Knoop get away with so many crimes for so long?
Well, I think, you must accept a lot of your people who are molesting children are not these sort of strangers who look bizarre, etc. It's going to be, about 80% of the time, it's going to be someone who is within this, with what we call an affinity system. It's friends, family, school environment, etc., that these types of offenders sort of ingratiate themselves, and then through a grooming process build up very slowly a relationship, usually with the caregivers and with the child, of course, and kind of work themselves into a position where they can get away with the sexual abuse. And this grooming process is also why it's so difficult for kids to come forward very often, because they might not see it themselves as abuse. They might feel guilty that they allegedly participated in the abuse, and this causes them often not to go forward to actually report these types of cases.
And I'm actually glad that you mentioned how the children actually find it difficult to report these types of cases. Now, in this case, the perpetrator abused children from 2 relationships. Would you say that the partners didn't know at all, or was it a case of the children simply not telling their mothers that this was happening to them?
Yeah, it's obviously difficult to give a blanket answer, but what I have seen quite a lot in the past is that these individuals either, like in this example, get into a relationship with a woman, They might have sexual relationships with the adult female, but their main intention is to get access to the particular kind of child they want. Other times they'll just befriend a single parent, offer to babysit, and then at some point engage in these types of behavior. So they are very good at worming their way into these people's lives. So they target not only the appropriate child, an appropriate meaning for various factors from their own interests, but also perhaps a vulnerable parent. So it is possible that these two ladies were not aware of what was going on. I can't obviously say in this particular case because I haven't interviewed either of them. So we have had cases where they wouldn't know what's going on, other cases where there's a suspicion or it's been raised by the child but they don't believe the child. And those again, these factors that relate to the grooming of why it might not come out or take a long time to come out.
Professor, let's look at the scope of the problem, specifically in South Africa, but also the rest of the world. Is it underreported?
Without a doubt. Again, partly because of the grooming process. Kids just often fear what will happen to them if they come out and report this. Like I said, some fear that they might be in trouble, or they fear how would their parents react, how would the community react, the sort of secondary victimization that people often speak about. So it's definitely, it's a hidden or a dark figure that we really don't know the full extent. And the more that, or the less faith people have in the justice system, the less they're going to come forward and report these types of crimes. So it's not uncommon that these might even come out, as we saw in the Bob Hewitt incident, years or decades after the actual offense actually occurred.
I know this may be a difficult question considering what you said earlier on about the perpetrators usually being someone the child knows, a family member, someone in the community, someone that doesn't necessarily look like a monster, for example. But how can one recognize a pedophile? What are the signs that parents need to look out for? And what do they tell their children?
And well, this is really the scary thing, because like other types of offenders like serial rapists, serial murderers, they don't look a particular way. You know, they're not engaged necessarily in a criminal lifestyle that would already make you suspicious of them. These are, for all intents and purposes, normal people who have a deviant sexual interest. So they might be very kind, very generally helpful people. They might look after the child to some degree in the sense of buying them food and clothing for school, etc. But they have this deviant sexual interest. So for the most part, they look very normal. And that's, again, like I said earlier, what is so scary about these types of offenders. So there's no obvious sign that will allow us to pick up who is and who isn't just by interacting with them. Of course, that's why we have to work with children to try and educate them, make sure that they are aware of what is a good touch, what is a bad touch, what is appropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior, and listen when they do start to say things that maybe make us be concerned about them using certain words or asking certain sexual questions. It could be, but not always, but could be a sign that they have been exposed to something sexually inappropriate.
Now, Professor, with the evolution of technology, we've got social media and children have access to smartphones. They are also on social media. How do you monitor children in the age of social media?
And sadly, pedophiles have been quick to adapt to technology, whether it be child pornography on the internet, distributing the child pornography, making it, to sourcing victims, luring victims, grooming victims. It's become really an integral part of most child sex offenders' modus operandi and behavior. I think one of the ways it is very difficult, things like cell phones with internet connections really become part of a way of life. You can't really avoid it. But I think in the home, for example, not having the computer connected to the internet in a stuck-away place, rather have it in the living room or where it's an open area in the house, where it's more difficult for kids to perhaps look up things that they shouldn't. You can ask yourself, if your child has a cell phone for safety purposes, do they have to have internet access also? And hope in some way that might limit the type of stuff they're exposed to. Of course, software is available that you can limit what people view, and usually that's free software that's available that you can download on the internet that kind of limits what the home computer can get access to. And the same way that your television, you can block certain channels. So these are some of the ways. But ultimately, if we don't raise our children properly, educate them properly, these mechanisms aren't going to stop it happening. You have to start with raising your children, making them aware of the types of problems and danger that these types of things have.
Professor, let's look at legislation and also conviction rates in South Africa.
Oh, sorry, I've lost the sound. I heard you say conviction rates.
Yes, I was saying let's look at legislation around protecting children against pedophiles and sexual abusers in South Africa. And then another thing would be the conviction rates in terms of cases like this.
Yeah. Look, I mean, throughout the world, I mean, we have to be fair. Throughout the world, sexual offences convictions are not good. And there can be various problems associated with it. It's often a one-on-one, he said, she said type of scenario. Of course, with children, there's never excuse for sexual behavior. So that's where your forensic evidence, such as DNA, etc., can be of great use, because if your semen is found inside the vagina of a minor child, there's no legal excuse. There can't be consent for that child to have sex with you, whereas with an adult, there is the issue of consent. But again, it's about making sure that this is brought to the attention of the police, proper forensic investigations are done. You know, it's great that we have child sexual offences courts, although some of them at some points were closed down. But we really do need specialised prosecutors, specialised courts, and thankfully the reopening of the family violence, child protection, sexual offences units that were closed down by Jackie Salibi in 2006 have been reopened. And it's really important to have those specialised policemen who know how to work with these exceptionally vulnerable victims. Of course, NGOs play a major role in assisting you know, the successful dealing with these types of victims and making the process less fearful for these types of individuals who've gone through this very horrific incident.
Professor, this was such an insightful discussion. Thank you so much for your time. That was clinical psychologist Professor Gerard Labuschagne joining us from our studios in Pretoria. More news after the break. Stay with us.